Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we ask the question, do you see your partner as a threat?
Our nervous systems can get in the way of perceiving our partner as a really bad person.
It's a very common dynamic in relationship where when you get uncomfortable, you look at your partner and you see them as the source of your discomfort.
My nervous system, my whole body perceived you as like a monster.
We talk a lot about this dynamic. We talk about the journey that Tarah and I have gone through in resolving this.
If you're sitting here listening and you feel hopeless and you feel desperate and you feel like there's no way, do some positive resourcing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation Podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. We are two therapists for many years. We are husband and wife. We've been married for a bit, and we are...
How long have we been married for, EJ?
3, 9, 13, like 11 years. 11 years we've been married. We've been together like 13 years.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Continue.
And... which I think gives us some authority.
Yeah, and in today's episode...
I'm not a monster.
I'm not a monster.
And
And I came up with that, I think yesterday, or no, it was in my little podcast ideas, because I remember when we were going through the most difficult times and we didn't know how to be there for each other emotionally. We did not have emotional safety in our relationship, though we had all the skills because of, well, for other people.
We knew the skills, we maybe didn't know how to use them well.
Exactly. Like I literally, my nervous system, my whole body perceived you as like a monster. Like I just wanted you to go away. It was really frightening because I also knew I loved you. And so I really wanted to do that podcast because our narratives, our nervous systems can get in the way of perceiving our partner as a really bad person. And actually, it's not true, but our body doesn't tell us it's not true. Our body tells us, run for the hills. This person is a threat. And so I just want to be able to open up any listeners' minds today. What if actually my partner is not out to hurt me, not out to get me? What if he or she or they are not a monster? What if my own nervous system is tricking me because of my body sensations and my thoughts? And how could it be different if this wasn't the case, if my narrative wasn't true?
Well, and I think it's your nervous system, and I think it's also just it's a bit of evolutionary biology. And we talk to couples we have in the past, like giving a context to this conversation, in that, you know, at the base level, we are animals that want to survive. And it wasn't incredibly long ago that there were more physical threats out there, you know, and so our brain had to become attuned to, if something is a threat, there's a whole nervous system response that's going to give you the ability to either freeze so they don't see you, run so you get away, fight so that you get them before they get you, right? And then life has changed a lot since the Industrial Revolution, and we don't have the amount of actual threats to our existence that we used to. But what's happened is we've sort of rechanneled that, I think, in our relationships, and that relationships ultimately do create strife. There's conflict, and then in relationship, we start to perceive and respond to our partner as if they are literally a physical threat to us.
And it's not helpful also if an individual has a history of trauma, a history of abandonment, a history of neglect, meaning physical or emotional, a history of lack of attunement, because who we are and how we were attuned to and what type of attachment we have also plays out into this intimate piece with the one person that we thought would never hurt us.
Yeah.
And so there's this could literally be like a 10-hour podcast, but really the idea today is, because I feel like it follows up great on the podcast that came out 2 weeks ago around the somatic piece, is like, what if my body and my mind is perceiving this all wrong, and how could it be different? Because people are now having panic attacks if they're not getting a text right away back from their partner. Like, okay, we have to look at the stimulus, we have to look at the response and say that's a little disproportionate.
I feel a real responsibility because we are therapists and because we're, we have to, doing good and not harming is sort of like at the top of
Always.
our therapeutic code of ethics. And so I think it's also important to say, like, there are circumstances that are physically and emotionally unsafe. And so most of what we talk about here in the Relationship Renovation podcast is in the context of maybe a dysfunctional relationship or a challenged relationship, but not an abusive relationship.
Right.
And if you feel that you are physically unsafe, where you think your partner would strike you, shove you, grab you, that's a whole other ball game, and that really isn't a relationship issue. That's an individual safety issue, and you have to really look at resources in your community to get some education and maybe some safety. And then there's the power and control. There are relationships where someone is controlling somebody through finances, through maybe psychological sort of like game playing and stuff like that. And that's where it also gets a little more fuzzy, and it's hard to say, like, is this abuse? Is this just like dysfunction? But we want to like clearly say that what we're talking about together in I'm Not a Monster is in the context of a relationship where you feel safe.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, where you're safe, or there's some way
Physically.
to be objective about your safety.
Yes. And again, it's more like these stressful times are happening and you haven't found skillful ways to navigate through them. So now our central nervous system is functioning like there's a threat out there because of the stress. And because your partner is the one person that's kind of constantly there with you, right? They become the object, I guess, of the threatening feeling in your body.
Which is something that we did struggle a lot with, and it's getting, I think, a lot better now through a lot of like very like big time work and subtle work. Is that when we were early in our relationship and things got really stressful, and we had the twins, and maybe finance was super stressful. We were starting a business and all of that. So Tarah was under tremendous stress, and I was under stress. There was a dynamic where Tarah began to see me as a threat, as something that she was scared of. I mean, you said that I don't feel safe.
I don't feel safe. I always felt safe physically. I did not feel safe emotionally, which again, we hear a lot of our couples coming in, the couples that are like, this is our last resort, because it's not sustainable. That feeling of not feeling emotionally safe, of a constant perceived threat, especially during conflict, which conflict is inevitable, it's not sustainable. It will wear and tear at your entire soul.
Well, and it's confusing and it's destructive in multiple ways, because even though Tarah, just clarified that like she never felt physically unsafe with me, right? But she would say over and over, "You're not safe. This relationship isn't safe. I'm not safe right now." And it was so confusing to me because when I think of safety, maybe less so now and maybe more so then, especially just, outside the therapist, but just like, as a human being in relationship with Tarah, like she looked at me like she was physically unsafe and was angry with me as if somebody who was unsafe. And it was just like, really, it was completely confusing. Like I didn't know how to react. I didn't know how to change that.
Well, and here's the reframe to that, because ultimately there's nothing you could say or do that is going to get me safe in my body. I have to first recognize, oh, that feeling is happening. Do I love that you do the work? Do I love that you're less defensive? Do I love that you're more present when we're in conflict? Yes. But ultimately, I had to recognize, oh, I'm having a trauma response right now. And I know that I love EJ, and we keep getting it wrong. So I had to do my own work around, like, even though this feels uncomfortable, like, I'm safe. So that was a piece of it. Another piece of it was we start to recognize what triggers each other, because we're going to constantly trigger each other throughout our lifetimes, but we're getting better and better at recognizing how not to some of the times. Like, I know that when you're talking to me and I walk away, that triggers you.
I don't like it.
You know that when I'm talking to you and you lose eye contact with me, that freaks me out. So we just get better and better at recognizing our own triggers, letting the other person know, hey, honey, I got to let you know when like that tone happened, that didn't feel good. And so that's how that's like the beginning of developing emotional safety. But I just want you to hear this. It's not about you doing anything outside of me that's going to make my body feel safe. I had to like do my own individual work internally around my nervous system.
Yeah. So taking it out of us and looking more in sort of the realm of like couples that you've worked with over the years, Tarah, like if people don't quite have the same words as us, they don't have emotional safety, they don't have like, window of tolerance, that both people are in a place nervous system wise where they can respond intentionally to one another. If they don't have that, right, what are just some indicators that you've seen in couples that this dynamic is playing, where one person is seeing the other person as a threat?
I see it like it's 90% of my couples I've seen in the 20 years I've been doing this. And it's why, right, our whole model at our center in our at-home program is based through an attachment lens, a family systems attachment lens. Because if we don't grow up with secure attachment, meaning I can be me, I know how to regulate my feelings, someone was attuned to me, my family was really good at navigating their own emotions. Okay, so this is rare that this happens. And if you have a family out there like that, we want to interview you because that's awesome. But most people are in insecure attachments, whether that's avoidant, whether that's anxious, whether that's disorganized. And those attachments pop up in our intimate relationships, but they don't understand that it's happening. And so I love the book Attached. It's a great read for anybody. You don't have to have the therapeutic lingo. And it talks about how we have this attachment style that happens because of our upbringing, because of our modeling of nervous system emotion regulation, and that we usually pick a partner that's going to be kind of opposite. Like an anxious will pick an avoidant. Like, look at us. I'm an anxious attachment. You're an avoidant attachment. Together, we had to work very hard on developing a secure attachment, because insecure attachments, for me, anxiety, it still pops up, but I'm really good at recognizing it now. Most people don't have that awareness because it's very subconscious, unconscious. Well, sorry, that was like a long answer to your question.
What popped into my head as well is, that when we pick our partner, right, and whether we get married or we become life partners or even we just move in together, what we've done is we've joined together and we've entered into an arrangement where we are together navigating life, right? We're living in a house together. We're raising kids together. We're have money, our money combined to wade our way through life, right? And so you've made this agreement that you're doing it together. And then when inevitably those differences in how you grew up and how you gave and received love and, just the normal challenges of a relationship, when they destabilize and make it harder to navigate life, because that's one of our sayings is like, when your relationship is secure, then everything is a little more manageable. When it's insecure, everything becomes more unmanageable. And so that's what happens. There's an inevitable strife in your relationship, and then it makes it harder to deal with everything else. And then everything else feels very unsafe. And then it becomes this like sort of fractured of like we're living together, but we're sort of like just managing life separately. And we see so many couples that come in like that, right? They've been 5, 10, 20 years together where they've detached from one another and they're both just sort of surviving, but not thriving together. And that's just like a perfect mix for feeling like, okay, well, the other person is not safe. So we'll still deal with life together, but not in a way that feels safe.
And it's creating new neural patterns, right? Because neurons that fire together wire together. And when you're in a consistent state of disconnect and just one behavior is triggering, you immediately go to that network. Oh man, this is hopeless. We can't even function. But when you start to say, you know what if I can feel safe in my body? What if we both do the work? Because at the end of the day, when we get our couples through our model that we do, they have the same goals. They have the same values. They are going towards the same thing. They're both in despair. It just looks different. So our stories at an individual level are different. But again, and it's so hard because of our ego to unravel that and get to the vulnerability. But with months of that, it unravels and you're like, gosh, we are in the same place. You begin to
understand and this is why I love Dr. Stan Tatkin's stuff so much, because one of his base level pieces of advice to couples is that you have to become an expert in your partner.
Yeah,
you have to understand them so deeply. And the amendment I might make that to that, and he may already do this, is you also have to be an expert in yourself, because like in our case, what made the perfect recipe for a lot of strife was you coming from a very, chaotic background, there being a lot being hurt by people, and me coming from a place of avoiding myself, avoiding emotions, avoiding conflict, right? And so you had this like deep desire to have somebody who could just be there no matter what, to be supportive, to be loving, to be present, right? And anytime anytime I got out of that place in those difficult moments or became judgmental or sort of like, went back into my cave, it became intolerable, because you have this like survivor thing. Like there's a certain amount of fight that comes out in you in those moments, which then when that fight would come out, then I would retract even more. I would also be able to justify like, well, clearly Tara's the one who's acting crazy here. She's the monster. I'm completely normal. I'm here like, stone face, or just like looking past her. And so what has given us a fighting chance is that now I understand much more deeply. I've learned more. I didn't know it all when I first got together with you, but I understand much more deeply what's going on. Maybe I don't always like the way you're acting, but at least I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also take major accountability for like getting better about understanding my emotions, communicating, dealing with conflict.
Well, I was just going to say, right. And we talked to some of our couples counselors too, like, wow, we get these couples in like this literally is the last resort, because they're both so activated and they both see each other as threats. And I love that they're here. I love that they're with us. Why? Because we get to actually help them regulate, to get to a baseline in their nervous system, to see if they can make their relationship work. But so many couples feel that, and it's so scary that they're like, F this, I am done. But the idea that people will work really hard and intentionally to see, okay, maybe actually this isn't as true as it feels. That's like the gift of couples counseling.
Well, it's a process, and that's what we want you guys to enter into within our community, within our at-home program. Maybe it's not us, maybe it's someplace else, but like it is engaging in a process where you build insight, and you're doing it with your partner. That's the trick of like, that's what I feel so blessed and so happy. And so like, we've gotten to where we are because of our dedication to each other and ourselves. is that like we decided early on like we want to become our best selves together. But we needed a process.
Yeah. I was going to say dig those heels, because my process was like, I would think about our times early on. I would think about how much I loved you, love you, but at the time loved. I caught myself.
That was past tense.
And I would think about just who you were as a human before our lives just got super stressful. So that's called positive resourcing. I would think of these moments that I actually like, oh, that's why. I remember when he proposed, like there wasn't a question in my mind of anything but yes. And I always came back to that, even during the most uncomfortable times, because I know that felt true. The scariness, that feels awful, but the love I also have for you, that felt true. That made it worthwhile to do the work. So if you're sitting here listening and you feel hopeless and you feel desperate and you feel like there's no way, do some positive resourcing. Why did I even get with my partner? What was it about them that actually made me say yes to forever, if that's the case, right? Or yes to right now, because why did we move in? Why did we have children together? It wasn't because this person made you feel awful and unsafe, or that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, in most cases, I can't put that general statement out for everybody, but
what got me through those times was a deep value thing, was that even in those difficult moments, we're coming back to like, I'm not a monster. When I would look at Tarah and feel like she was a threat, I would just like dig deep into the fact that like, she's got to be suffering. Like, I know this person was so full of glow and just so full of positivity. And she's such an amazing human being. And even though right now I'm not seeing that in her, that must be because she's really struggling right now. Yeah. And I didn't always know what the solution was. I didn't know how we were going to get through it, but I just like dug deep into just some sort of empathy for like she wouldn't be doing this if she wasn't in a lot of pain. And I think that that's a huge thing that couples can resource, is looking at their partner's behavior that they don't necessarily like and seeing it not as a problem, but as something that they can be empathetic towards.
Note to self for next podcast.
Take that.
Okay. Because that's the biggest piece. I was like, oh my God, I used to be this like little sparkle, this little like lightning bug, like so full of life. Like, how dare you do this to me? Bastard.
I killed your soul.
I literally felt that. I was like, you did this to me. I did not sign up for this shit. Like, I am.
You straight up said that.
So that is so real. It's like, but how can actually another human actually make you feel lifeless? Like, that was the thing I had to get my head around. Like, I did not want anything outside of myself to have any type of control over my happiness or who I am at a very core level. And because that feels awful, but there's a lot of couples that get hijacked by that. And they're like, you've made me who I am today. And we're here to challenge that in a very healthy, loving, gentle way.
Well, it's a natural thing. We've talked about like, this is like a natural thing. It is part of the, evolutionary, biologically based that would happen.
Right.
But so Tarah before would get trapped in that, like for hours, days, maybe even weeks, right? Of like, I've snuffed out her soul, I've taken away her joy. That still happens, that has probably happened in the last week, maybe, but now she understands it more deeply. She's talked to me about it. I understand it more deeply. And now she catches herself much more quickly and is like, wow, I'm in like a really negative dialogue. I see it and I'm like, okay, she's perceiving me. She's perceiving me as a bad person, that I'm at the source of all of her suffering. So gosh, don't I then want to show up in a way that says, no, I love you, I accept you. Yeah. And that's how I try to react to you more often now, is even in a time where before I might not have liked your behavior, saw you as a monster. Yeah. I go like, no, I'm going to like talk to her like just with as much love in this difficult moment as I would have, as if she's being her little firefly self.
And it shows. So thank you.
I'm getting better. It's not always easy. It's definitely not. It's definitely not about just like you having a realization. It's about me learning how to show up in those moments. Like, I didn't know how to before. I really didn't.
So thank you for listening. This is, again, there's so much meat to this, right? On so many levels. And again, our intention today was, what if? What if our narratives could be different? What if my body could react differently? What if we found that at the core of this relationship, we both wanted the same things and we're both suffering? It just looks very differently. And how can we start to understand and unravel that so we have a fighting chance to see if this relationship can work?
Yeah. And it's totally worth it. We were like living proof of, there were many times that we probably could have bailed. There were many times you could have completed that drive to Kentucky in the minivan and just freaking
sorry, sissy,
left the chaos that I brought with me. You know, but we didn't, and
we don't have a minivan anymore.
Yeah, we don't got a minivan. Thank God. Traded that thing, got a truck.
So reach out. We want to hear
please.
feedback, stories, you know, anything. We learn from you. Hopefully you learn from us.
Yeah, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, give us a review. That's awesome. We love to get your reviews. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us about what you'd like to hear more of on the show. Share us. You know, tell somebody that you know that this show would be important for, that would help them as in their personal journey, in their relationship journey. Like, let's build this community. Let's make this world better, one individual, one couple at a time.
I love that. Thank you. So thank you so much for listening. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Bye.